Case 1. KaLeah Manning and Raenysha Washington. 2 children died. Their mother was in the car. Their aunt was behind the wheel. And both women knew before that vehicle left the driveway that those little girls were not secured. That is where this case begins. On the evening of December the 11th, 2022, at approximately 9:15 in the evening, a modified silver Honda minivan was traveling near Scott Robinson Boulevard and Monte Alban Drive in North Las Vegas, Nevada. Behind the wheel was KaLeah Manning, 25 years old. In the passenger seat was her biological sister, Raenysha Washington, 23 years old. In the third row of that vehicle, unrestrained, were Washington's 2 daughters, 3-year-old Taylor Wilmer and 2-year-old Rose Wilmer. No car seats. No seatbelts. Nothing securing those children to anything. Washington had sold the children's car seats 10 days before that night. 10 days. That detail became one of the most significant facts before the sentencing court. Manning had spent the earlier part of that evening at a friend's home. According to toxicology results collected approximately 2 hours after the crash, her blood alcohol level registered at 0.191, more than twice Nevada's legal limit of 0.08. Manning lost control of the vehicle. It veered off the road, sideswiped trees, struck a light pole and a wall, and crashed head-on into a large palm tree. 2-year-old Rose died at the scene. 3-year-old Taylor was transported to University Medical Center, where she died the following day. Both Manning and Washington were severely injured in the crash. Manning sustained a ruptured bladder, a spinal injury, a hip dislocation, a broken ankle, and required surgical removal of her spleen. Washington suffered 2 broken legs, a ruptured spleen, and internal bleeding. Both sisters were hospitalized for days following the crash. The North Las Vegas Police Department responded to the scene and opened a full investigation immediately. Officers documented the interior of the vehicle using body camera footage. The first officer on scene captured evidence of the crash's impact on the vehicle and the absence of child restraint systems. Blood samples were collected from Manning approximately 2 hours after the crash under standard DUI investigation procedure. The samples were submitted for toxicological analysis, which confirmed the blood alcohol level of 0.191. During questioning at the scene and in the days that followed, Manning told investigators that the car's power steering had pulled the vehicle to the left and that she had believed she was fine to drive. Washington told police she knew it was wrong to place the children in the vehicle without car seats, but said she could not argue because it was not her car. She also stated she had not arranged alternative transportation because she lacked the funds to do so. Both women were arrested while still hospitalized. Manning's first court appearance took place on December the 20th, 2022, before North Las Vegas Justice of the Peace Natalie Tyrrell. Manning appeared in a wheelchair. Her initial bail was set at $100,000. It was later reduced to $50,000, with conditions that included house arrest and a scram alcohol monitoring device, a continuous transdermal alcohol testing unit worn on the ankle that detects alcohol consumption through perspiration. Washington posted $25,000 bail and was released with conditions. Manning was charged with 3 counts of DUI resulting in substantial bodily harm or death, 2 counts of child neglect resulting in death, reckless driving resulting in death, child abuse, and multiple traffic violations. Washington was charged with 2 counts of child neglect and endangerment resulting in death. A jury trial was originally scheduled for April the 8th, 2024, before Clark County District Judge Adriana Escobar. However, before that date arrived, both defendants entered guilty pleas. Manning pleaded guilty to 2 counts of DUI resulting in death. Washington pleaded guilty to 2 counts of child abuse, neglect, or endangerment resulting in death. All remaining charges against both defendants were dismissed as part of the plea agreements. Sentencing was conducted on July the 11th, 2024, before Clark County District Judge Erica Mendoza at the Regional Justice Center in Las Vegas. Manning received 3 to 10 years in Nevada State Prison, with credit for 108 days already served. She was also required to install a mandatory breath interlock system on any vehicle she operated upon release, pay $10,000 in restitution to the Victims of Crime Fund, and pay a $2,000 fine. Washington received 364 days in Clark County Detention Center, followed by 5 years of probation. A suspended prison sentence of 5 to 12 years was held over her head as a condition of compliance. She was additionally ordered to complete mental health and substance abuse evaluations, grief counseling, drug testing, and parenting classes, and to pay $10,000 in restitution plus a $2,000 fine. During the sentencing hearing, both defendants addressed the court. Manning stated, addressing the court directly, "I never imagined being the cause of so much hurt to my family, my nieces, and myself. I will forever be mentally and emotionally in prison." Washington stated, 15 days after the accident, "I got to kiss them one last time in a casket." Their mother, Edwina Manning, left the courtroom twice during the proceedings. She addressed Judge Mendoza directly, saying, "This single accident has cost us 4 lives. Please, Your Honor, I need my babies. Please." Tavon Wilmer, the father of Taylor and Rose, spoke publicly at a memorial vigil following the verdict, saying that every day he woke up feeling that a part of him was missing. Judge Mendoza specifically addressed the sale of the car seats 10 days before the crash, stating on the record, "I am not sure that all of these mistakes are things that could happen to a responsible parent." The case drew significant community attention throughout North Las Vegas and was reported extensively by Fox 5 Vegas, 8 News Now, News 3 Las Vegas, and the Las Vegas Review-Journal from the initial crash through the sentencing hearing. As of the date of this documentary's research, no appeals have been publicly reported. Guilty pleas, particularly under terms that include dismissed charges, substantially limit the appellate options available to defendants under Nevada procedural law. This case, documented across multiple court sessions spanning more than 18 months, illustrates how a series of choices, alcohol consumption, the absence of child restraints, and the failure to arrange alternative transportation, resulted in the complete destruction of one family and the criminal prosecution of 2 sisters who were the only adults present that night to make different decisions. The Clark County court system, through its investigation, forensic evidence, and sentencing proceedings, completed its accountability process on July the 11th, 2024. Both Manning and Washington remain under Nevada Department of Corrections or probationary supervision. Like this video if you want to see more deep dive case files. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on the sentencing. Subscribe to Crime Doc so you never miss a case. Now on to Case 2. Case 2, Dolores Pinardo. The victim was her biological sister. The motive was money, and the case sat unsolved for nearly 4 years, held together in the end not by physical evidence, but by a single jailhouse phone call recorded before anyone knew they were listening. Maria Elena Marino, born August the 8th, 1955, was a 52-year-old Las Vegas widow, a mother of 2 adult children, and an employee in the gaming industry. Her fingerprints were on file with the Nevada Gaming Commission as part of her employment registration. She managed the financial affairs of her aging father, Alfred Ross, and oversaw his fire and safety business. She was the older sister of Dolores Pinardo, also known as Dolores Petrosino, born July the 22nd, 1961. On or around May the 23rd, 2008, a confrontation took place at the family home located at 4115 Santa Teresa Place in Las Vegas, Nevada. According to court records and the investigation that followed, an argument erupted between the 2 sisters. The confrontation escalated. Maria Marino was killed. Her body was not found immediately. A motorcyclist discovered remains on May the 28th, 2008, near Mount Charleston, off Lee Canyon Road in the Nevada desert. The body had been disposed of in a remote location. Lye had been applied at the scene in an apparent attempt to accelerate decomposition. It was a partial mummification case. The body had been exposed to the elements for several days before discovery. What followed was one of the most methodically constructed investigations in Clark County homicide history, because investigators had virtually no physical evidence to work with at the scene. The Clark County Coroner's Office performed the autopsy. Forensic pathologists worked to identify the remains. Technicians used a process of rehydrating the skin on the hands of the deceased in order to recover fingerprints from tissue that had dried and become distorted during exposure. Those recovered fingerprints were submitted to the FBI's database, which cross-referenced them against fingerprint records held by the Nevada Gaming Commission for Maria Marino's employment registration. The match confirmed the identity of the victim. The autopsy established the official cause of death. Evidence indicated ligature strangulation. Petechial hemorrhaging was present in the eyes, a recognized forensic marker for compression of the blood vessels in the neck. The hyoid bone, a small structure at the base of the tongue, was fractured. Additionally, blunt force trauma was documented across the victim's back, indicating that she had been struck while alive before strangulation occurred. A piece of speaker wire was recovered in association with the body. These findings formed the forensic foundation of the cause of death determination. However, despite multiple searches of the family home, investigators recovered no physical DNA evidence linking any of the suspects to the crime scene. The entire prosecutorial case rested on recorded communications and witness testimony. 3 co-conspirators were identified across the course of the investigation. Dolores Pinardo, the victim's younger sister, was the orchestrator. Her daughter, Stephanie Petrosino, age 30, was identified as a direct participant. Dolores's husband, Richard Pinardo Jr., age 38, was identified as having assisted in the disposal of the body. The investigation came together over several years through a combination of recorded jailhouse telephone calls and witness accounts. A critical recorded call from May 22, 2008, the day before the estimated date of death, captured Dolores speaking to her incarcerated son Bobby Petrosino. On that call, Dolores stated, "There's not going to be any more problems when you come home. I just had a discussion with my friend that kept giving us a hard time, and she's not going to give us a hard time anymore." This call was entered into evidence and played for the court. 5 days before Maria disappeared, a separate witness reported hearing Dolores say that the victim was going to be dead within 7 days. 2 of Stephanie Petrosino's friends came forward independently. Both stated that Stephanie had asked them for help hiding a body and had mentioned, in their presence, that she had strangled her aunt with speaker wire. Investigators noted that the detail of speaker wire had not been released to the public at any point during the investigation, meaning Stephanie's disclosure of that specific detail was treated by investigators as a significant indicator of direct knowledge. Bobby Petrosino, Dolores's son and Stephanie's brother, ultimately cooperated with police in 2011. He told detectives that his stepfather Richard Pinardo Jr. had confessed to him, and that Stephanie had told him she had been responsible for completing something that Dolores had started. The motive, as established through prosecution evidence and court record, was financial. Dolores Pinardo had grown increasingly resentful of her sister Maria's control over their father Alfred Ross's finances and his fire and safety business. Evidence indicated that Maria had been considering formally cutting Dolores out of the family's financial arrangements. According to prosecution filings, the motive was described by the district attorney's office as greed and jealousy. Dolores Pinardo was arrested on Monday, January 9, 2012. Richard Pinardo Jr. was arrested on Wednesday, January 11, 2012. Stephanie Petrosino was already in custody at the Florence McClure Women's Correctional Center, serving a sentence for an unrelated conviction. All 3 were charged with conspiracy to commit murder and murder with use of a deadly weapon. The lead detective on the case was LVMPD homicide detective Robert Rogers. Prosecutors were Clark County Chief Deputy District Attorney Giancarlo Pesci and Deputy District Attorney Michael Schwartzer. No trials were held. All 3 defendants entered guilty pleas. Dolores Pinardo pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter with a deadly weapon and received a sentence of 6 to 16 years in Nevada State Prison. She served approximately 6 years before her release. Stephanie Petrosino pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, receiving a sentence of life in prison with the possibility of parole after 10 years, plus a consecutive term of 36 to 96 months for the deadly weapon enhancement. Richard Pinardo Jr. entered an Alford plea, acknowledging that sufficient evidence existed to convict him without formally admitting guilt to charges of accessory to murder and conspiracy to commit murder. He received a sentence of 2 to 5 years. Sentencing was conducted by Clark County District Judge Carolyn Ellsworth. In a development that closed a deeply unusual chapter in this case's post-conviction timeline, Richard Pinardo Jr. was killed on May 24, 2024, in Las Vegas when his girlfriend, Julie Dean Bush, drove a vehicle into him intentionally near Oakey Boulevard and Eastern Avenue. Bush subsequently pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 12 to 35 years on June 17, 2025. Stephanie Petrosino remains incarcerated at the Florence McClure Women's Correctional Center as of April 2026, with parole eligibility proceedings ongoing. This case is notable within Nevada criminal justice history for the complete absence of physical DNA linking defendants to the primary crime scene and for the near 4-year gap between the victim's death and the arrests of the principal suspects. The prosecution was constructed entirely from recorded communications, witness testimony, and investigative inference, an approach that ultimately resulted in all 3 defendants accepting plea agreements rather than proceed to trial. Hit subscribe to Crime Doc to follow more cases built entirely on recorded evidence. Drop a comment below. Which detail in this case stood out to you the most? Now let us move to Case 3. Case 3, Skylar Bailey and Emily Ridout. The plan had been in motion for weeks. Text messages, coordinated meetings, a target selected based on his social media, 2 half-sisters working together, and a man who arrived thinking he was meeting someone he trusted. Connor Rebelito was 19 years old. He worked for a company that refilled ATMs and regularly posted photographs on Instagram showing large amounts of cash. His employer had warned him not to display money on social media. That advice was not followed, and according to the investigation that followed his death, it made him a target. Skylar Faye Bailey, 23 years old, and Emily Ridout, 20 years old, are half-sisters who share the same biological father. That relationship was confirmed through school records during the investigation. Also charged in the case was Nathan Nava, 22 years old, Bailey's boyfriend and the father of her children. According to court documents, the 3 were in severe financial distress at the time of the offense. Bailey and Nava had been evicted from their residence, and they were living with their children without stable housing. The planning phase began weeks before July 19, 2024. According to the investigative record compiled by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, Bailey identified Rebelito as a potential robbery target based on his social media presence. She spent several weeks coaching Ridout on what text messages to send him through Instagram to arrange a meeting. The communication was not casual, it was methodical and documented. On July 2, 2024, Ridout forwarded Bailey a screenshot of her conversation with Rebelito. Bailey replied, "We win, you win." In a separate message, Bailey described Rebelito as someone who, in her words, always brings money with him. He likes to look flashy and show off. 2 prior meetings were scheduled and canceled, one on July 16th and one on July 18th. On the evening of July 18th, Bailey and Nava exchanged text messages about borrowing a firearm. In those same messages, Nava referenced previous criminal activity, writing, "I promise this month over I'm going hard, baby, no more robbing." These messages were recovered from the defendant's phones and entered into evidence. On the evening of July 19th, 2024, at 7:24 in the evening, Bailey sent Nava the address of the meeting location, an apartment complex in the 4700 block of Arid Avenue, near Nellis Boulevard and Cheyenne Avenue in northeast Las Vegas. Rebelito arrived at that location. An eyewitness at a nearby window with a direct line of sight to the scene observed Rebelito walking in the company of a woman when 3 individuals approached at a run. Rebelito was attacked. He was struck in the head and then shot. The woman who had been walking with him did not intervene. Rebelito died as a result of his injuries. Police arrived at the scene and located a single spent cartridge casing. Forensic analysis confirmed that the casing had not been fired from a firearm recovered in Rebelito's possession. The forensic findings contradicted any suggestion that Rebelito had discharged a weapon during the encounter. Officers identified suspects in the vicinity of the scene shortly after the attack. A ride-hailing vehicle, a Polestar, was seized. The vehicle contained the mobile phones of both Bailey and Nava. Both defendants voluntarily provided their passcodes to investigators. Those phones contained the entire documented history of the conspiracy, from the initial identification of the target through the messages coordinating the location and the request to borrow a firearm. All 3 defendants, Bailey, Ridout, and Nava, were arrested and transported to the Regional Justice Center. They appeared before the court on August 13, 2024. A bail hearing was conducted on August 19, 2024, before Justice of the Peace Harmony Letizia. The prosecutor, Clark County Chief Deputy District Attorney Giancarlo Pesci, presented the text message evidence, the witness account, the forensic findings from the cartridge casing, and the financial context of the defendant's situation. Justice of the Peace Letizia ordered all three defendants held without bail. Defense attorney Charles Goodwin, representing Bailey, did not dispute the factual timeline in his bail argument. All three were ordered remanded into custody. The charges against all three defendants include open murder with use of a deadly weapon, battery with intent to commit robbery, and conspiracy to commit robbery. Under Nevada law, open murder encompasses both first-degree and second-degree murder and allows the charge to be pursued without specifying the degree until trial or plea proceedings. A preliminary hearing was scheduled for September 17, 2024, at the Regional Justice Center. As of the date of this documentary's research, April 2026, no trial verdict has been publicly reported. The case is believed to be proceeding through Clark County District Court. This case is significant within the context of Nevada criminal investigation for multiple reasons. It demonstrates the evidentiary weight that digital communications, specifically text messages and social media screenshots, carry in modern prosecutorial cases. The entire conspiracy was preserved in the defendants' own words, across their own devices, using their own voluntary passcodes. The weeks-long communication chain between Bailey and Ridout provided investigators with a documented record of coordination, motive, target identification, and pre-offense planning that left virtually no ambiguity about the nature and intent of the scheme. The Las Vegas Review-Journal, 8 News Now, Fox 5 Vegas, and Hoodline all reported on the case from the date of arrest through the August bail hearing. The case has also been reviewed by True Crime Avenue and referenced in broader coverage of robbery-related homicides in the Las Vegas metropolitan area. Connor Rebelito was 19 years old. He had a job. He had a social media account. And according to investigators, the fact that he displayed cash on that account made him a target for a robbery scheme that had been coordinated by two half-sisters over a period of at least 3 weeks. Like this video if you want to see the full trial outcome when it becomes available. Subscribe to Crime Doc and turn on notifications so you are the first to know when we update this case. Leave a comment below. Do you think the text message evidence is enough to guarantee a conviction? We want to hear your analysis. On to Case 4. Case 4. Jacqueline Gentle and Carolyn Willis Casey. This case did not involve a single crime committed on a single day. It was a 2-year federal fraud operation built on fictitious companies, fake employees, and fraudulent claims submitted to multiple agencies simultaneously. 2 sisters, nearly $300,000, a 10-day federal trial, and a conviction on every count. Jacqueline Louisa Gentle, 27 years old at the time of conviction, and Carolyn Shelmadine Willis Casey, 40 years old, are biological sisters and citizens of Belize. They operated within a broader family network that also included their brother, Frederick Vernon Williams, 35, and his wife, Denise Allison Williams, 36. All 4 were residents of Las Vegas, Nevada, at the time the scheme was in operation. The fraud scheme ran from approximately August 2010 through June 2012. Nearly 2 full years of continuous fraudulent activity, spanning multiple state and federal agencies, and involving the creation of fictitious businesses, fictitious employees, and dozens of fraudulent claims. Here is how the scheme worked. According to the federal investigation and the trial record, Williams and Gentle registered 2 fictitious companies with the Nevada Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation. The companies were named Luna Consulting and Centro America Export. Neither company performed any legitimate business activity. Using these entities, the defendants submitted fraudulent wage records for 16 fictitious employees, none of whom existed. Those fictitious wage records were then used to file fraudulent unemployment insurance compensation claims with the state of Nevada. The claims were approved, and the proceeds, approximately $218,000, were distributed via Nevada debit cards, which the defendants then used to withdraw cash from ATMs across the Las Vegas area. In parallel with the unemployment fraud, the family members also fraudulently claimed United States citizenship on federal passport applications. Their father was not a United States citizen, which meant they were ineligible for citizenship by parentage. Using false citizenship claims and false identity documentation, They fraudulently obtained a series of federal benefits across multiple programs. According to the federal indictment and trial record, those benefits included $33,184 in Social Security benefits, $10,900 in federally funded Pell Grant education assistance, $33,814 in food stamp benefits, and $1,132 in Medicaid medical benefits. The total documented fraud across all programs was approximately $297,000. The federal investigation was multi-agency. The case was built through the combined resources of the United States Department of State Diplomatic Security Service, the offices of Inspector General for the Departments of Labor, Agriculture, Education, and Health and Human Services, the Social Security Administration Office of Inspector General, and Homeland Security Investigations. The case was pursued as part of President Obama's Financial Fraud Enforcement Task Force, a coordinated national initiative targeting financial crimes committed against federal programs. Investigators traced the unemployment compensation claims through the Nevada debit card system, cross-referenced ATM withdrawal records, identified the fictitious company registrations as fraudulent through business record analysis, and connected the passport applications to the false citizenship claims through federal identity verification databases. The case proceeded to trial in the United States District Court for the District of Nevada before U.S. District Judge James C. Mahan. The trial lasted 10 days. The prosecuting attorney was Assistant United States Attorney J. Gregory Dam. The jury returned its verdict on Friday, January 15, 2016. Jacqueline Ginnell was convicted on 9 counts spanning multiple federal statutes, including conspiracy to commit mail fraud, aggravated identity theft, mail fraud, theft of government money, false passport application, false claims of citizenship, misuse of a United States passport, and misuse of a Social Security number. Carolyn Willis Casey was convicted on 1 count of mail fraud. The sentencing hearings took place in late June of 2016 before Judge Mahan. Jacqueline Ginnell was sentenced on June 29, 2016, to 65 months, approximately 5.5 years, in federal prison. She was additionally ordered to pay $218,000 in restitution to the defrauded agencies. Carolyn Willis Casey was sentenced on June 30, 2016, to 30 months, 2.5 years, in federal prison. Their brother Frederick Williams received a sentence of 87 months. His wife Denise Williams received 2 years of probation. All 4 defendants faced the additional consequence of potential deportation to Belize following the completion of their federal sentences, as none had established lawful permanent resident or citizen status sufficient to overcome the deportation consequences of their convictions. This case was reported by the United States Department of Justice, District of Nevada Press Release Office, the Las Vegas Review-Journal, the Amendola newspaper of Belize, and the Breaking Belize News publication. The Amendola and Breaking Belize News covered the case extensively because of the defendants' Belizean citizenship and the impact the prosecution had in Belize's diaspora community. The Ginnell and Willis Casey federal fraud case is instructive for several reasons that are distinctive within the broader landscape of sister-involved crime cases documented in Nevada. Unlike the violent offenses in this documentary, this was a structured financial crime, methodically planned, systematically executed over 22 months, and dependent on bureaucratic systems failing to cross-reference fraud across multiple agencies. The investigation succeeded specifically because of inter-agency coordination that ultimately connected the unemployment fraud, the passport fraud, and the benefit program fraud into a single prosecutorial narrative. The 10-day federal trial, with its multi-count indictment and the participation of inspectors general from 5 separate federal departments, represents one of the most administratively complex prosecutions in the District of Nevada's documented sister crime cases. Subscribe to Crime Doc for more cases that go beyond the headlines into the actual court record. Hit the like button if you found this case breakdown valuable. Leave a comment. Have you ever seen a fraud scheme this extensive caught in Nevada before? We want to know what you think. Moving on to Case 5. Case 5, Susanne Carno. The life insurance policy was purchased 5 months before the murder. The emails had already been sent. And 2 months before her husband was killed, she told a university class that he had died, before he actually did. Susanne Carno planned this in detail, and the evidence she left behind dismantled every element of her defense before she ever reached trial. Richard C. Carno, 36 years old, worked as a casino lighting technician in Las Vegas. He was the father of 4 children, including an infant son, Jack, who had been adopted in 2001. He had been married to Susanne D. Carno, 35 years old, for 4 years. On January 30th, 2002, Richard left for work in the early morning hours and did not arrive. His body was found on January 31st, 2002, at 7:54 in the morning. His green Ford Escort was located in the 3900 block of Las Vegas Boulevard North. Richard was found in the passenger seat. A black plastic trash bag had been placed over his head with slits cut for the eyes. A noose was tied around his neck. Duct tape and rope were secured across his chest. The official cause of death, determined by forensic pathologist Rexine Worrell, was asphyxia, with petechial hemorrhaging in the eyes consistent with external compression of the blood vessels in the neck. The investigation by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department moved quickly toward a suspect. In August 2001, 5 months before the murder, Susanne Carno had taken out a $500,000 life insurance policy on her husband's life. The couple carried approximately $30,000 to $40,000 in credit card debt at the time. The life insurance policy had been purchased, and the debt was accumulating. Those two financial facts became central to the prosecution's motive argument. Investigators established that Susanne had recruited her biological brother, John Brian Ray, 37 years old, to carry out the killing. She had offered him $50,000 in exchange. Ray abducted Richard, held him at the Comstock Trailer Park on Las Vegas Boulevard North for approximately 18 hours, and ultimately caused his death. During the period of captivity, residents of the trailer park witnessed a man with duct tape on his hands and feet attempting to flee through the park before being caught. The investigative evidence against both defendants built through multiple channels. Email records were recovered and entered into evidence. In those emails, Susanne had written to Ray, "Get it done right away. I'm tired of waiting." In another message, "If you're not going to do it, just tell me, and I'll do it myself or find someone who will." The emails also contained references to a bookshelf that Ray was supposedly constructing, a code term established through the investigation for the murder plan itself. James Walsh, a friend of Ray's who had a history of methamphetamine use, testified as a prosecution witness. Walsh stated that Ray told him he was performing a contract killing for $50,000 while they were watching the film Casino. Walsh further testified that Ray later arrived at his trailer driving Richard Carno's vehicle with a man inside who had a plastic bag over his head. Alexei Ismailov, a resident of the trailer park, testified that he had overheard Ray on a telephone call saying that his sister wanted him to perform a job in exchange for a large sum of insurance money. A UNLV classmate of Susanne's, Sally Still, provided testimony that was among the most significant in the trial. Still told the court that in October 2001, more than 2 months before the murder actually occurred, Susanne Carno told her UNLV class that her husband had died from an ice skating injury. The class was held in October. Richard Carno did not die until January 31st, 2002. That testimony established that Susanne had been rehearsing her role as a widow before the act occurred. The joint capital murder trial commenced on January 22nd, 2004. Before Clark County District Judge Joseph Bonaventure. Prosecutors were Chief Deputy District Attorneys David Schwartz and Chris Owens. Defense for Carno was provided by Deputy Special Public Defender Alzura Jackson. Defense for Ray was provided by Deputy Public Defenders Will Ewing and Joseph Aboud. On the evening of January 28th, 2004, the jury returned its verdict. Both defendants were found guilty on all 4 counts: first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, first-degree kidnapping with use of a deadly weapon, and robbery with use of a deadly weapon. Before the penalty phase of the trial could begin the following morning, both defendants accepted an agreement: 2 consecutive life sentences, with eligibility for parole after 40 years, in exchange for waiving their rights to appeal. Formal sentencing was entered on March 11th, 2004. Richard's mother, Mary Ellen Hodder, delivered a victim impact statement to the court. Susanne's 18-year-old daughter Mallory testified during the proceedings that she believed her mother was innocent. In May 2005, Ray's attorney filed a motion for a new trial based on a claim that Walsh had made a jailhouse confession, suggesting he personally participated in placing the bag over Richard Carno's head. Judge Bonaventure denied the motion. In ruling from the bench, the judge described the plea deal Susanne and Ray had accepted as a hell of a bargain. Susanne Carno is incarcerated at the Florence McClure Women's Correctional Center in Nevada. John Brian Ray is incarcerated at High Desert State Prison. No appeals are available to either defendant under the terms of the plea agreement. The Carno case is studied within Nevada criminal justice circles for several distinguishing characteristics. The use of email communications as direct evidence of a murder-for-hire scheme was among the earlier documented instances of digital communications evidence playing a central role in a Nevada homicide prosecution. The testimony of the UNLV classmate, establishing that the defendant had constructed a cover narrative about her husband's death more than 2 months before his actual death, was described by prosecutors at the time as one of the most compelling pieces of circumstantial evidence in the case. Richard Carno was 36 years old when he died. His 4 children, including infant son Jack, were left without a father as a direct result of a scheme that was planned, communicated in writing, and executed by his wife and her brother. Hit the like button if this case file was informative. Subscribe to Crime Doc and turn on all notifications so you get every new case the moment it drops. Comment below, which piece of evidence in this case do you think was most decisive for the prosecution? Now on to Case 6. Case 6, Janet Juarez. The dispute started with $1,000. By the time it was resolved in a courtroom, 5 years later, a 21-year-old was dead, a newborn had no father, 3 siblings were facing murder charges, and a 4th was charged as an accessory. All of it over a debt that the victim had explained he could not repay because his brother-in-law had died. Anthony Rivero was 21 years old. He was the biological father of Janet Juarez's 8-month-old son. Prosecutors established at trial that the two had never been in a relationship. Rivero had a brief encounter with Janet following a breakup with his girlfriend, then reconciled with his girlfriend before learning Janet was pregnant. The nature of their connection was limited strictly to the shared parentage of their child. At some point before December 2020, Janet had given Rivero $1,000 toward the purchase of a vehicle. Rivero's brother-in-law subsequently died of a heart attack. Rivero gave that money to his sister to help cover funeral costs and explained to Janet what had happened. Janet's response, as documented in text message records recovered during the investigation, was direct. She communicated that she did not care about the deceased and that the situation involving a relative's death was not her concern. She demanded repayment of the money and, separately, the return of a firearm. The text messages that followed became the foundation of the prosecution's case. On December 6, 2020, Janet sent Rivero a message stating she wanted her money and/or gun, and that her brother was coming. On December 8, 2020, at approximately 2:06 in the afternoon, near the 100 block of Montello Avenue, near Nellis Boulevard and Charleston Boulevard in East Las Vegas, Christian Juarez, Janet's older brother, age 36, approached Rivero's Nissan. Rivero was shot multiple times. He managed to drive a quarter-mile before the vehicle left the roadway and came to rest in a yard on Ronan Drive. Rivero was transported to the University Medical Center, where he was pronounced dead. Janet Juarez, 23 years old at the time, was the orchestrator. Christian Juarez was the shooter. Their brother Juan Juarez, 33, was charged with conspiracy and aiding the offense. A 4th defendant, Yanet Ruiz, Juan's partner, provided the vehicle used in the commission of the crime. The investigation was conducted by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department Homicide Section. Rivero's mother, Maria Rivero, was an eyewitness. She told investigators she observed a Hispanic male attempting to access her son's vehicle and saw a woman sitting in an SUV with her hair pulled up. The physical description matched Janet Juarez. Video surveillance cameras in the area captured footage of the suspect vehicle, a white GMC Yukon Denali registered to Yanet Ruiz. Cell phone tower records placed Ruiz's device near the crime scene during the relevant time window. Text message records recovered from Rivero's phone documented the escalating communications from Janet. Those records included a voicemail left approximately 7 minutes before the shooting in which a caller stated, "I'm outside your house. How you want to handle this?" The identification of the shooter came through a citizen tip. An individual approached law enforcement independently and reported that Christian Juarez had personally admitted to the shooting. That tip, combined with the physical description provided by Maria Rivero, the vehicle registration for the Yukon Denali, and the cell phone tower data, led investigators to Christian Juarez. Janet and her brother Jonathan, whose charges were later dropped, were arrested in December 2020. Juan Juarez was arrested on January 21, 2021. Christian Juarez was arrested on September 29, 2021, more than 9 months after the shooting, after investigators compiled sufficient evidence to support a murder charge against the identified shooter. Charges against all 3 siblings included open murder, voluntary manslaughter, and conspiracy, with deadly weapon enhancements. A 4th defendant, Janet Ruiz, was charged as an accessory. After more than 4 years of proceedings, all 3 Juarez siblings entered Alford pleas in November 2024, formally acknowledging that sufficient evidence existed to support conviction without admitting personal guilt. Sentencing was conducted on April 16, 2025, before Clark County District Judge Michelle Levitt. The presiding prosecutor was Clark County Chief Deputy District Attorney Brianna Lamana. Defense attorney Aaron Grigsby, representing Janet, acknowledged on the record that his client had set in motion the events that led to Rivero's death. Christian Juarez received a sentence of 10 to 25 years in Nevada State Prison. Janet Juarez received a sentence of 8 to 20 years, structured as 4 to 10 years for voluntary manslaughter and 4 to 10 years for the deadly weapon enhancement, running consecutively. Juan Juarez received 4 to 10 years for voluntary manslaughter and conspiracy. Janet Ruiz pleaded guilty to accessory to murder and received a suspended prison sentence with a term of probation. All 3 siblings were jointly ordered to pay restitution exceeding $55,000. Victim impact statements were delivered to Judge Levitt during the sentencing proceeding. Maria Rivero, Anthony's mother and an eyewitness to the attack, told the court, "My son's life was more than $1,000. Much more." Anthony's sister Stephanie Bain told the court she would miss her brother's laughter for the rest of her life. It was additionally reported during the sentencing proceedings that Janet Juarez had vandalized Rivero's gravesite following the murder. That conduct was noted on the record and factored into the court's assessment of the sentencing. The Juarez case represents a pattern that investigators and prosecutors in Clark County have documented in a number of family-coordinated offenses, a dispute that, on its face, involved a recoverable financial matter, escalating through a series of increasingly direct communications until it resulted in a planned violent act carried out by family members acting together under the direction of the person holding the grievance. Anthony Rivero was 21 years old. His son, 8 months old at the time of the shooting, was left without a father. The case was closed at the sentencing level on April 16, 2025. Like the video if you appreciate cases covered through the full sentencing timeline. Subscribe to Crime Doc. We track these cases all the way through. Comment below. Do you think the Alford plea structure was the right resolution here? Now on to Case 7. Case 7, Elinor Indico. She had been living in her brother's home for 2 months. She was asked to follow 2 rules. She did not follow them. And when the confrontation came, when the household reached its breaking point on an ordinary October afternoon, Ashley Indico, 9 months pregnant, died. So did her unborn son. And a 5-year-old child covered in blood ran next door to a neighbor's apartment and said his mother was bleeding. Ashley Indico was 26 years old, 9 months pregnant, and due to give birth on October 26, 2013, 10 days after she was killed. Her unborn son had been named Anthony Indico. She was married to Aristio Indico, known as Eris, and together they had 2 children, 5-year-old Alexander and 3-year-old Annabelle, both of whom were home at the time of the offense. Elinor Indico, 30 years old, was Eris's biological sister. She had fallen on difficult circumstances and had moved into her brother and sister-in-law's apartment in the 2800 block of North Rancho Drive in Las Vegas, Nevada. When she moved in, Eris established 2 conditions. She was to seek employment, and she was not to use drugs around the household. Neither condition was maintained. After approximately 2 months, Elinor was discovered in the bathroom using a controlled substance. Additionally, Witnesses noted she had been allowing the children access to inappropriate television content. Eris told her she had 1 week to leave the apartment. On October the 16th, 2013, Ashley called Eris at his workplace to inform him of a confrontation developing at home. Elinor was agitated, slamming doors while the young children slept nearby. Ashley's blood pressure was elevated, a medically significant concern given her advanced pregnancy. Eris told Ashley he would come home. The situation at the apartment did not wait. According to the investigation and trial evidence, a verbal altercation between Ashley and Elinor escalated. Elinor retrieved a 4-inch double-bladed knife from her personal belongings in the apartment and used it to attack Ashley. Ashley was stabbed at least 14 times, sustaining wounds to multiple areas of her body. She attempted to reach the front door to leave. She was pursued and ultimately locked herself in the bathroom, where she was found when emergency services arrived. Both Ashley and her unborn son Anthony died as a result of their injuries. 5-year-old Alexander left the apartment with blood on his hands and went to the apartment of neighbor Stephanie Vasquez. He told her his mother was bleeding. Vasquez contacted emergency services. Elinor had barricaded herself inside the apartment with 3-year-old Annabelle before police arrived. Elinor Indico was taken into custody by Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department officers and transported to University Medical Center. Investigators conducted 3 separate recorded interviews with her at the hospital. In the first interview, Elinor denied any involvement in the attack. In the second interview, she claimed she acted in self-defense. In the third interview, a previously undisclosed recording that became the subject of significant pretrial litigation, she acknowledged pursuing Ashley and confirmed that 2 superficial wounds to her own body had been accidentally self-inflicted during the attack. The failure to disclose the third interview recording to the defense until January 2014, approximately 3 months after the arrest, became the basis for multiple pretrial motions, including a defense motion to return the case to a grand jury. That motion was denied. The Nevada Supreme Court subsequently declined to grant a petition for a writ of mandamus related to the disclosure issue. Initial bail was set at $120,000 on October the 21st, 2013, by Judge William Kephart. On November the 8th, 2013, a grand jury returned an indictment. Judge Linda Bell revoked Elinor's bail, and she was ordered to remain in custody pending trial. Pretrial proceedings before Judge Stephanie Miley addressed multiple defense motions. The case was subject to several scheduling postponements over the following years. The trial ultimately commenced in May 2018 before Clark County District Judge Valerie Adair. Lead prosecutor was Clark County Chief Deputy District Attorney David Stanton. Defense attorney was Joshua L. Toms Heck. The prosecution's case included the 3 recorded police interviews, forensic medical evidence documenting the nature and number of injuries sustained by the victim, the testimony of Stephanie Vasquez regarding Alexander's arrival at her door, and the physical evidence recovered from the apartment, including the knife and the wound pattern analysis. On May the 11th, 2018, the jury returned its verdict. Elinor Indico was found guilty on all counts: murder with use of a deadly weapon, manslaughter of an unborn quick child, and child abuse and neglect. Sentencing was conducted on June the 26th, 2018, before Judge Adair. Aristio Indico, Elinor's brother and Ashley's widowed husband, addressed the court directly. He pointed to his sister, who was in restraints, and told the court, "Life with no parole, or death sentence. That's it. Plain and simple. You took 2 lives from me." Judge Adair imposed a sentence of life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years, with the individual sentences running consecutively. Elinor Indico remains incarcerated in the Nevada Department of Corrections system. The case was reported by the Las Vegas Review-Journal, True Crime News, Inquirer.net's Global News section, the Las Vegas Sun, and Asia Times, the latter 2 covering the case due to the Filipino-American background of the defendant and the community impact in Las Vegas's Filipino-American population. The Indico case is notable within Nevada criminal proceedings for its extended pretrial timeline. More than 4.5 years elapsed between arrest and trial, and for the legal issues surrounding the delayed disclosure of the third interview recording. Despite those procedural complications, the trial proceeded to a complete conviction on all counts, and the life sentence was imposed in full. 2 people died in an apartment on North Rancho Drive on October the 16th, 2013. Ashley Indico, 26 years old, and her unborn son Anthony, 10 days from being born. Their 2 surviving children were present. Subscribe to Crime Doc to follow every case in this series to its conclusion. Hit the like button if this was valuable. Drop a comment. What do you think about the nearly 5-year gap between arrest and trial? That is a long time for a family to wait for answers. Now on to Case 8. Case 8, Monique Maestas. A dispute over a drug transaction. 2 juvenile siblings from Utah. A trailer in Mesquite, Nevada. 2 children home alone. This is one of the most fully documented cases in Nevada's modern criminal history. It reached the Nevada Supreme Court twice and resulted in a death sentence that has been reviewed and upheld at the appellate level. Bo Santino Maestas, 19 years old, and his biological sister Monique Maestas, 16 years old, were from Utah. Their father, Harry Maestas, was already incarcerated at the time of their births for second-degree murder. Both siblings were present in Mesquite, Nevada, on or around January the 22nd, 2003. The case began with a transaction. Bo Maestas purchased what he believed to be methamphetamine from Tamara Bergeron and her boyfriend Robert Schmidt at the Casablanca Casino in Mesquite, Nevada. When Bo tested the substance, he determined it was not methamphetamine, it was salt. He was enraged. Bo obtained a set of kitchen knives from the father of his girlfriend, Sabrina Bantam, at the Casablanca RV park. With Monique accompanying him, he went to Bergeron's trailer. Bergeron was not home. She was gambling. Her 2 daughters were alone inside. Christiana Cowan, age 3, and Brittany Bergeron, age 10, Christiana's older half-sister. On the first attempt to access the trailer, the children did not open the door. Bo and Monique left. On the second attempt, with Monique present, Bo told 10-year-old Brittany that her mother had been in an accident and needed her to open the door. Brittany opened the door. Both siblings entered the trailer. Christiana, age 3, was killed. Brittany, age 10, survived, but was permanently paralyzed from the waist down as a result of a stab wound that severed her spinal cord. She was transported to the University Medical Center in Las Vegas, where she survived after extensive medical intervention. Christiana did not survive. During the flight from the scene, while traveling in the vehicle with Bantam, Monique stated, "I should have sliced the girl's neck then, because I was too scared. I couldn't do it." That statement was later provided to investigators by Bantam and entered into evidence at trial. The 3 fled north on Interstate 15. Bo discarded the knives and bloodied clothing on the roof of an abandoned gas station in Fillmore, Utah. Multi-state law enforcement alerts were issued. Utah Highway Patrol located and arrested all 3 individuals in Nephi, Utah, approximately 250 miles north of Mesquite, within 6 hours of the attack. Bo confessed that same night, acknowledging what he had done. He told investigators he knew it was wrong and that he believed he probably should be penalized for it. Formal charges were filed on January the 23rd, 2003. The investigation recovered the knives from the gas station rooftop based on information provided by Bantam, who cooperated with law enforcement. The case proceeded through Nevada's court system over the following 3 years. Bo Maestas pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and attempted murder in May 2005. A penalty phase was conducted before Clark County District Judge Donald Mosley in June 2005, a capital penalty hearing to determine whether Bo would receive the death penalty. The jury deadlocked 10-2 in favor of death, and Judge Mosley declared a mistrial on the penalty phase. A second penalty hearing was scheduled. The second capital penalty hearing took place in August 2006. This time, the jury returned a unanimous death verdict. During that proceeding, prosecutors read into the record a letter Bo had written from jail in which he referenced the offense in language the court found relevant to the question of future dangerousness. Formal sentencing occurred on October 5, 2006. Judge Mosley sentenced Bo Maestas to death by lethal injection, plus additional consecutive and concurrent terms totaling up to 75 years for related charges. Monique Maestas pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, attempted murder, burglary, and conspiracy on the same day the death verdict was returned against Bo. Given her age at the time of the offense, 16, Monique was not eligible for the death penalty under applicable juvenile justice law. She was sentenced to 47 years to life in prison. Judge Mosley noted on the record that she would be eligible to apply for parole at the age of 63. The case generated significant post-conviction litigation. In March 2009, Beau's attorney filed a motion for resentencing based on claims of juror misconduct during the second penalty phase. Judge Mosley denied the motion. In March 29, 2012, the Nevada Supreme Court issued a unanimous ruling upholding Beau's death sentence in the published opinion Maestas v. State, 128 Nevada Advance Opinion 12, 275 Pacific 3rd 74. Justice Michael Cherry authored the opinion, writing, "It is difficult to imagine a more horrendous killing than Christiana's." Subsequent post-conviction petitions addressing attorney performance claims were heard by Judge Kathleen Delaney in further proceedings. A separate post-conviction matter involved a corrections officer at the Florence McClure Women's Correctional Center who pleaded guilty to official misconduct after an investigation revealed an inappropriate relationship with Monique Maestas while she was incarcerated. That officer was prosecuted separately. Beau Maestas remains on death row at Ely State Prison in Nevada. Monique Maestas remains incarcerated in the Nevada Department of Corrections system. The Maestas case is one of the most extensively reviewed in Nevada Supreme Court history, having produced published appellate opinions, multiple post-conviction hearings, and ongoing death row proceedings that span more than 20 years. The case is cited in academic discussions of juvenile accomplice liability, juvenile sentencing under capital frameworks, and the application of the death penalty in multi-defendant juvenile cases. Brittany Bergeron survived. She has spoken publicly in the years since, including in advocacy contexts around crime victim services. Christiana Cowan, 3 years old, did not survive. Like this video if you are learning something from these case files. Subscribe to Crime Doc. We cover cases with this level of court record depth every single week. Leave a comment. Do you believe the Nevada Supreme Court made the right call in upholding the death sentence? Tell us below. Now on to Case 9. Case 9, the Mullicle Sisters. For sisters, a casino penthouse on the 75th floor, a domestic dispute that crossed state lines. And then, on the morning of the scheduled preliminary hearing, every charge was dismissed because the victims did not appear in court. Tagila Mullicle, 31 years old, Saida Mullicle, 30 years old, Shaquila Mullicle, 34 years old, and Nagras Mullicle, 36 years old, are 4 biological sisters originally from Utah. All 4 traveled to Las Vegas, Nevada, in March 2019 in connection with a domestic matter involving Tagila's estranged husband, Hazam Albadari. Albadari had traveled to Las Vegas and was staying at the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas, a resort hotel on the Las Vegas Strip. According to police reports, he had deliberately changed his room assignment so that his estranged wife could not locate him. A Cosmopolitan hotel employee who recognized Tagila, however, directed her to the floor where Albadari was staying. Albadari was not alone. His girlfriend, Jocelyn Lopez, was present. All 4 sisters gained access to the penthouse suite. According to the police report filed by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, what followed was a physical altercation involving all 4 defendants. The report documents that the sisters struck Albadari and Lopez with closed fists, and that Lopez was additionally struck with shoes that were used as an improvised implement. Lopez sustained injuries including loss of hair and scratch marks from the heels of the shoes. Albadari sustained a swollen eye and scratch marks. He provided a statement to police indicating he had changed rooms specifically to prevent Tagila from locating him, and that the sisters had nonetheless found him through the hotel employee's disclosure. All 4 sisters were subsequently charged with burglary, a felony, battery, a felony, and conspiracy, a felony, in connection with the incident. Under Nevada law, entry into a dwelling or structure with intent to commit a crime constitutes burglary regardless of the nature of the underlying crime. The classification of the hotel room as a protected structure supported the burglary charge. The case was set for a preliminary hearing on Thursday, January 9, 2020, at the Regional Justice Center in Las Vegas, before Justice of the Peace Melissa de la Garza. At the scheduled hearing, Deputy District Attorney Brian Schwartz appeared for the prosecution and immediately moved to dismiss all charges against all 4 defendants. The basis for the dismissal was the non-appearance of the victims. Albaderi and Lopez did not come to court for the preliminary hearing. Without their participation and testimony, the prosecution concluded that it could not proceed. Justice of the Peace de la Garza granted the motion. All charges were dismissed. Defense attorney Chris Rasmussen, who represented the sisters, stated following the dismissal, "This was a private family matter that was handled internally." No subsequent charges were filed in the case as of the date of this documentary's research. The Mullicle case occupies a specific and procedurally distinct category within the broader set of Nevada sister crime cases documented in this series. Unlike the other cases, the Mullicle matter concluded not at trial, not through a plea agreement, and not through a verdict, but through the prosecutorial decision to drop all charges when the complaining witnesses chose not to participate in the court process. The legal framework here is straightforward. In criminal proceedings, particularly in cases where the alleged offense involves a domestic relationship or a private dispute between parties who subsequently resolve the matter outside of court, the decision of victims not to appear can result in dismissal. The prosecutor, lacking the testimony of the complaining witnesses and unable to compel their participation in a way that would support the felony charges, exercised discretion to dismiss rather than proceed to a hearing likely to fail on its merits. The case was reported by the Las Vegas Review-Journal in connection with its coverage of criminal proceedings at the Regional Justice Center. Details of the arrest and charging documents were confirmed through court record review. The four Mullicle sisters, Tagila, Saida, Shaquila, and Nagras, were charged with serious felonies related to an incident on the 75th floor of one of Las Vegas's most prominent resort properties. Their cases were closed on January 9, 2020, without conviction, without trial, and without the participation of the individuals who reported the incident to police. Whether the underlying family dispute was resolved, and by what means, is not a matter of public record. What is documented is the full sequence of events from the March 2019 incident through the January 2020 dismissal, and the legal mechanism that brought those proceedings to a close. Comment below. What is your take on how the Mullicle case ended? Does the dismissal make sense to you given how the Nevada system works? Hit subscribe if you want to follow more cases where the legal outcome surprises you. Like this video if you have found this series informative. Now on to Case 10, our final case. Case 10, Katrina Carvalho. The victim was her sister's boyfriend. The shooting took place on Valentine's Day, and the suspect was in California for nearly 10 months before investigators caught up with her. When they did, the forensic evidence they had collected at the scene in February was still waiting. Vintel Johnson was 25 years old. He was the boyfriend of Katrina Carvalho's biological sister. On February 14, 2021, Valentine's Day, Johnson was at an apartment complex located on El Rancho Drive in Sparks, Nevada, in Washoe County. Sparks is a city in northern Nevada, directly adjacent to Reno and within the Reno metropolitan area. At that location, Johnson was shot. He sustained 3 gunshot wounds and died as a result of his injuries. He was 25 years old. Katrina Carvalho, 24 years old at the time of the offense, was identified as the suspect in the shooting. The investigation was conducted by the Sparks Police Department, with assistance from the Washoe County Sheriff's Office and other regional law enforcement partners. Investigators gathered multiple categories of evidence at the scene and in the immediate aftermath of the shooting. Surveillance video captured footage relevant to the sequence of events at the apartment complex on the date and time of the offense. DNA analysis was conducted on biological material recovered from the crime scene. That analysis was entered into evidence at trial. Witness testimony was obtained from individuals with knowledge of the circumstances surrounding the shooting. Additionally, recorded jail telephone calls made by Carvalho following her arrest were reviewed by investigators and identified as containing statements relevant to the prosecution's case. Carvalho did not remain in Nevada after the shooting. She fled the state and was located in Los Angeles County, California, where she was arrested in December 2021, approximately 10 months after the offense. The Sparks Police Department coordinated with California law enforcement to effectuate the arrest. Carvalho was subsequently extradited from California to Washoe County, Nevada, to face the pending charge. The charge filed against Carvalho in Washoe County District Court was first-degree murder with use of a deadly weapon. the most serious homicide charge available under Nevada law. First-degree murder in Nevada requires proof that the killing was willful, deliberate, and premeditated. The use of a deadly weapon enhancement carries significant additional sentencing weight under Nevada statute and requires that the weapon, in this case, a firearm, be found to have been used in the commission of the offense. The case proceeded to a jury trial in Washoe County District Court before a district court judge. The Washoe County District Attorney's Office prosecuted the case. The prosecution presented the surveillance video footage, the DNA analysis results, the witness testimony obtained during the investigation, and the recordings of the jail telephone calls made by Carvalho after her arrest. The jury returned a guilty verdict on the first-degree murder charge with the use of a deadly weapon enhancement. At the sentencing hearing, the Washoe County District Court judge imposed a sentence of life in prison with the possibility of parole after 20 years. That sentence reflects Nevada's mandatory minimum parole eligibility threshold for first-degree murder convictions where the death penalty is not sought. Katrina Carvalho entered the Nevada Department of Corrections system to serve her sentence. She is eligible to seek parole consideration after serving a minimum of 20 years. The Washoe County District Attorney's Office announced the conviction and sentence publicly following the proceedings. The case was documented in regional law enforcement reporting from the Sparks and Reno area. The Carvalho case is instructive within the context of this documentary for a number of reasons that relate specifically to investigative procedure and prosecutorial method. First, the case illustrates the use of a multi-evidence framework: video, DNA, witness testimony, and recorded jail communications in a regional jurisdiction outside of the Clark County metropolitan area. Washoe County is geographically and administratively distinct from Las Vegas, and the Sparks Police Department and Washoe County District Attorney's Office represent a different prosecutorial environment than the Clark County courts that appear in the majority of this documentary's cases. Second, the flight and extradition component of this case highlights the jurisdictional mechanisms through which Nevada law enforcement can recover a suspect who has crossed state lines. The Uniform Criminal Extradition Act, adopted in Nevada under Nevada Revised Statutes, Chapter 179, governs the process by which a person charged with a crime in Nevada can be returned from another state. California's cooperation in this case enabled the extradition to proceed without prolonged legal resistance. Third, the 10-month gap between the offense and the arrest, while the suspect was out of state, demonstrates that investigative work completed at the scene on the day of the offense retained its evidentiary value throughout the period of the suspect's absence. The surveillance footage, the DNA results, and the witness statements were all preserved and remained available to the prosecution at trial. Vintel Johnson was 25 years old. He died on Valentine's Day, 2021, at an apartment complex in Sparks, Nevada. The woman convicted of taking his life was his girlfriend's sister. The jury found her guilty. The court sentenced her to life. That is case 10. That is all 10 cases. If you learned something from this documentary, hit the like button right now. It tells YouTube to show this content to more people who care about real case documentation, and it helps this channel keep doing the work. Subscribe to Crime Doc if you are not already subscribed. Click that bell icon and turn on all notifications so you are the first to know when the next case file drops. We post regularly, and every case in this channel is built on the same standards you saw today: court records, verified sources, professional documentary format. Leave a comment below. Tell us which of these 10 cases stood out to you. Tell us which case you think deserves a full standalone documentary. Tell us if there are other Nevada cases you want us to investigate and cover. We read every comment, and your input directly shapes the content we create. Share this video with someone who follows true crime. Not everyone who follows this topic knows that Crime Doc exists, and when you share, you help us reach them. Thank you for watching. This has been Crime Document. See you in the next case file.